Hey, seventh graders, this is Mrs. Rich. Our first big unit in language arts this fall is going to be on how we learn new, complex, difficult words. I do not hand out a vocabulary list on Monday where you study them and have a test on Friday. We're going to be developing a vocabulary list where you find words that you do not know through text that you're reading, whether it's a free choice book, a textbook, a comic book, newspaper, cookbook, magazine, whatever text you're reading, that's where you're going to find words that you don't know. In this video, we're going to be going through a format that you're going to follow to learn a new word, and we're going to go step by step through this format, and then we'll do a practice. And then as we go through this unit, you'll be developing more and more complex words that you will add to your own personal library. So stay tuned for the vocabulary notebook format. So this is a copy of our vocabulary notebook format. You'll get a separate document to keep in your files in Google Drive. So I'm going to go through its 8 steps. So when you're learning a new word from something that you're reading, it's not just look it up in the dictionary and you're done. We're going to go through a process, so by the time you're done, this is a word that you're going to know really well. So step 1, find a word, and here's the key. You do not know in anything you are reading. It could be fiction, nonfiction, magazines, textbooks, comic books, newspapers. Do not select a word from the dictionary. And the reason for that is you need to be able to have the word found within context, which means it's found in text so that you can read the sentences that came before it, the sentences that came after it, read it within the sentence to help you try and get a better idea of what the word means. So for a sample, we're going to be looking at the word dank. So everything that's in large print and in bold is our sample. So number 2, you're going to write the sentence where you found the word, and you're going to use quotation marks around the sentence to show that it was found in text. So the sentence where we found dank was the cellar walls were dank and musty. I can think about what that might mean. It might mean stinky, it might mean dark, it could mean a lot of different things, but this sentence really doesn't give enough information. So because it doesn't, we're going to go on to number 3. We're going to write the dictionary definition based on its meaning in the sentence. So something about being dank and musty in a cellar. We have to include the pronunciation guide, which is how do you say the word, and the part of speech, which is how is the word used. Is it a noun, a verb, an adjective, etc. So here's the dictionary definition for dank. It's an adjective. It means slightly or relatively wet, and it's pronounced dank, dank. So number 4, you're going to illustrate the word. What does dank look like? So you could actually physically draw it in your notes. You could find an image from the internet, from Google. You could do, if you're doing it on paper, you could do a clip art from a magazine, whatever you want. So the picture that I use is not actually the greatest picture because it's a wet mop. It looks a little wetter than dank, because dank means slightly wet, and this mop is pretty sloppy wet. So, but it gives you the idea that it has something to do with wet. So number 5 and 6, we're going to use my favorite tool. We're going to use the thesaurus, and I'll show you some really good tools in a little bit. So the thesaurus is where you're going to find synonyms, which means words that have the same or similar meaning, and you're going to find antonyms, which words that have the opposite meaning. So words that mean something similar or the same to dank would be wet, moist, damp, and soggy. And words that are the opposite of dank would be dry, arid, or dehydrated. Step 7 is where you put the word into context by writing your own sentence. And the sentence that is used here is the old dank mop smelled sour because it never dried out. And the phrase never dried out relates to the fact that it's dank, it's musty, it's damp, it's just not dry. Step 8 tends to be the step that most kids get puzzled with or have trouble with, and it says describe 2 things that your word is like. Not more synonyms, but actual objects or things that you can touch and see that could be used to relate to the word. So when I think of the word dank, I think of old stone walls. They're damp to the touch. Things that are stored in my cellar. I have an old stone cellar. Things are always dank and musty and damp down there. If you leave clothes in the dryer halfway through a cycle, they're dank. They're not soaking wet, but they're certainly not dry. So these are things you will not find in a thesaurus. These are words that you have to come up with when you try to associate your new word with things that you already know. So if you do steps 1 through 8 accurately and correctly, then you have met the standard and you would get a 3 on this assignment. And by the way, this is a weekly assignment. You will be learning 1 new word a week following this format. So as the year goes on, the expectation is your words will just get more challenging and more complicated. If you want to exceed the standard, we have an extension, and this really forces you to go deeper and to really think about the word that you're exploring. And the directions for your extension is you're going to write an acrostic poem that gives examples of the word and shows a deeper meaning. An acrostic poem is you write the word vertically like this, dank, and then you use each letter of the word to develop a deeper meaning. So here's an example of an acrostic poem for dank. Dirty old gym socks lost in the bottom of a locker smell like an old wet dog. After playing in the snow, woolen mittens take hours to dry. Nothing dries in a tent when you camp in the rain. Kitchen sponges and dish rags when the dishes are done. So in this poem, I'm looking for all kinds of different ways to show that everything I'm talking about is slightly wet. It's never going to dry. If something's out in the rain or playing in the snow, all these things would make your possessions be dank and damp and sometimes not smell too good. So this is the vocabulary notebook format. Like I said, I will be including in this lesson a PDF that you can include in your Google Drive so that you always have it. And we're also going to be using a template, which I will attach. And the template is a blank vocabulary notebook assignment where you just fill in the blanks that include all of the pieces. So be looking for that in this assignment as well.